I just recorded for about 20 minutes and I decided I didn't like what I had recorded, so I'm doing this over. I feel like I'm losing the motivation to do these videos. Whereas it used to be where I felt like I could do a video every day. And to be honest, on some level that's still accurate, but I'm uncomfortable with the level of subscribers that I have, which is, it obviously is not that high. 360. But I appreciate everyone who has and let me just say, I do appreciate everyone who's subscribed. I don't know if there's bots in that number, but I'd like to think anyway. I'm not sure. I'm getting a little bit distracted. I'm looking at my cat. Oh, okay. I think she's fine. It looked like a patch of hair had just come out of her or something. I was like, what's going on? But I think it was just the lighting. Anyway, so I'd like to think that they're real, and I have a feeling that they are. Unfortunately, the videos are not getting disseminated to the people that are subscribed to me. But I found out something interesting a few days ago, and I wanted to share it with whoever's listening. And I know that a few people that are listening actually do videos themselves, you know. It's not necessarily the same content that I do. It's a sort of weird, lonely incel guy in his apartment recording into a microphone. But it's not, at the same time, there's a crossover, you know. But anyway, so I found out recently that, because I was watching a Clownfish TV video, right? And that these people that talk about pop culture related stuff, and it's a husband and wife. And speaking of which, they don't appear on camera, but they're not anonymous. They're sort of anonymous. In other words, they don't have their names, they make up fake names for themselves, but people know who these people are. And to some extent, I think they want to be media figures, you know? So they're not really shying away from that. But they don't have their faces on camera. But so anyone who does this type of content, as they say, for where it's a guy or a woman, it doesn't matter, I don't think, talking into a microphone, just doing a talking video, and then you have some sort of image, or maybe it's a collage of imagery or whatever, or there's something going, or you're playing a video game even, I think. Like Trevor does that, and one of his videos blew the fuck up, you know, and he got lucky in a way. I don't want to say that in a disparaging way. Like, he did get lucky on some level, but the video was also good, and that's partly why it went into the algorithm. But even his videos, I think any video where it's just a dude talking, and you're not showing your face on camera, these videos are now under attack from the perspective of YouTube, because YouTube has decided. This is what my understanding is. I'm not saying this is the absolute fact, because I'm not sure. But basically, like, YouTube has decided, like, oh, we're fighting AI content. And as anyone listening to this will probably know, there are a lot of AI videos out there where you'll click on the video, and I'm even getting able to start being able to tell when it's an AI video before even hearing it, and just seeing the thumbnail, and when it's going to be one of those types of AI videos where it's a script and it's an AI voice reading it. It's hard to even say that an AI is reading it. That's not really quite that's not quite accurate, but you know what I mean. An AI is reading a script. Obviously, AI can't read in the same way that a human does, but you know what I mean. So these videos where an AI is reading a script, and they're all over the place, and they're multiplying, you know. And for the most part, it's very easy for me to be able to tell when a video is an AI voice. Whereas like a year ago or 2 years ago maybe, when I would hear that, I was kind of like, oh, this guy sounds really polished, you know. But then over time I was like, I could tell, and it gets very annoying, you know. It's just, personally, to me, a lot of people might not mind that type of content. Oh, my cat's eating the butter that I left out. Yeah, maybe I should just let her eat it. I don't know. I don't even really like that butter that much. Yeah, so the point is, so there are these AI videos that have proliferated across YouTube, and it's very low effort, and people are able to monetize them. So YouTube has nominally said that, taken a stance against this. That's the part that's suspicious to me, because as far as I'm concerned, AI is all over YouTube, and YouTube thinks of that as being like free money or something, because a creator doesn't actually have to be, well, I guess sometimes it's not quite that way, but the point is, like, I don't see them as being really anti-AI, but they're saying that they're fighting AI content, right? Because it's deceptive or whatever they're saying. And so in the course of that, anyone like me, because their AI, the YouTube's AI that determines what the video content is and who it's going to get, pushed out to in the algorithm, and if it will get pushed out at all, their AI that is determining that apparently isn't able to distinguish between real voices and AI voices, like the AI voice videos, So in the process of that, people like me are getting diminished, and I think anyone who does these types of videos where you're just talking and you're not showing your face, apparently that these people are being penalized because of the AI that YouTube is using to determine whether a video is AI or not. So as far as YouTube, apparently, from that logic, YouTube is determining that this video that I'm recording right now is AI because I'm not showing my face, which seems strange to me. But the point is, like, it kind of addresses something that I had been wondering about, which is that this channel has been kind of dead for, I don't know, like about 6-ish months. Like, the videos really don't get into the algorithm the same way that they did a year ago. And I think that's partly why. I think that's partly what's going on. Anyway, so I was thinking about, like, this affordability crisis and what's going on in this country, and I wonder about the people who listen to these videos. Like, is everyone who, and you can answer in the comments if you want, or you can not, whatever. I'm not really asking, I'm not soliciting responses, but at the same time, I am sort of wondering if people are able to afford to survive, because I just had to change jobs. I've talked about that. And now I'm getting 40 hours a week. I don't really want to say how much I got paid, but it's an amount that I would think you'd be able to survive on. That's the point. And I find that I'm barely able to survive. And I don't mean that in any sort of ironic way. I mean, like, it looks to me as if, and without spending almost anything, I don't buy clothes, I barely buy books anymore. I try not to buy anything because I don't have the money, and so I just see my bank account dwindling. I have a certain amount of money. I was talking about this with Joey a little while ago, and he was saying, like, how much money he has, and he said, he didn't tell me a number, which is fine. I wasn't expecting him to, but he basically said, I have enough money to, I think he said, go 6 months without worrying. If I didn't have a job, I'd be able to I'd be okay for 6 months or something to that effect. But his situation is very different from mine because I don't have a family. I've talked about this. I have my sister in Brooklyn. She's not going to give me money. She would if I were, like, in some kind of trouble, I think. But even then, I don't really know. I don't know. But the point is, like, everyone else here who lives around me, I don't want to start, like, getting on a rant about this, but, like, it's just a thing that I've noticed. I don't see other loner types of people. I see that everyone now at this job where I work, and this is normal. I'm not even like complaining, but everyone has a family. Everyone has a network. I don't have that. I have certain people I know that if I told them, like, yeah, I got kicked out of my apartment and I'm homeless now, they would be like, I don't want to have that happen to you, so I'm going to help you out. And for that, I'm very grateful. I think that I have a few people that would basically say that to me if they found that out. But the point is that I spend basically almost no money, and I'm making more money than I was before, because I just left this job where I quit, and then the guy took it personally, and I told him, like, I have to survive. And I was explaining to him that I wasn't making enough money, but he, and apparently that it turned into a whole thing, because he just doesn't seem to want to talk to me anymore, which is, that's his right, But anyway, so I just explained to him, like, I need to survive, so I have to move to this other job where it's going to be 40 hours a week. And making basically the same amount of money. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So, like, right now I'm actually making more money. But in a couple months that won't be the case. And it'll be roughly the same that I was making before, except that it'll be 40 hours instead of 35 hours a week. So anyway, I just find that I'm barely able to survive, and I can't really buy anything. And I'm just wondering, do other people have this problem? I mean, I know that they do. I know that there are some people who have this problem. But I'm just sort of wondering if there's anyone listening who sort of has this issue. It's just, and it's a sign of the times. This problem isn't going away. We were supposed to get a Doge, dividend. Apparently that's not happening. But I still think maybe, wait, when are the midterms? The midterms are going to be, they're going to be this November, because the presidential election was in the November of 2024. So the midterms are coming up. I had this assumption, and to be honest, I still think it might happen. And I'm not even saying because I'm desperate. I'm just like, I don't mean that as wishful thinking, but it from a strategy perspective, it makes sense to me. But I think Trump still might actually come out with a stimulus check to get people to vote for him again. And to vote, not for him, but to get people to vote for the Republicans again and to keep them in the Senate and the Congress. I think they're both. I think both Senate and the Congress are Republican now. In a way, I don't really keep track of that, but I think they're both still Republican, unless I'm wrong. So I think he might still do that, but there's definitely no talk about it, because I just Googled it, and the first article that came up was something from a year ago, And so that's how long they've been talking about this. And when we first had the people, like the Doge people, and they were like going into businesses, and the Democrats were saying it was a travesty, and that Elon Musk was like a bad person and everything. That's when they were first starting to talk about this Doge dividend, and it feels like nobody's talking about it anymore. And I don't know what the fuck the whole point of that was, if it's not going to help people in any way. But this is what a dying empire looks like. And I don't say that with glee. I'm a proud American, or I used to be. It's funny, I was watching this guy Demcad, who I've watched for a long time. I don't religiously watch his videos or anything, but I just like his style or whatever. He's kind of a survivalist guy, and it's interesting because he's black, and you don't generally, when you think of a survivalist, like if you ask anyone right now, imagine a survivalist, just imagine that in your head. You're going to think of like Ruby Ridge or something. You're going to think of a white guy, But anyway, the point is, like, he's a conservative, which is not a surprise if he's a survivalist. But anyway, so he was saying something like, and a lot of people don't even want to vote again. And I hadn't heard anyone say that, but I said that to the boss I was just talking about, who I quit from that job. But I told him a few months ago, and he was very pro-Trump, so I couldn't really talk to him about this stuff. But like I said, to be honest, I really never want to vote again after what's happened. So I wonder how many other people feel that way. Because you've got a media that's trying to make you think that somehow we're fighting in this battle of like, this music isn't loud enough, and now it's probably too loud. Anyway, so you've got this media that's trying to create this division, and they're talking about transit. This is this is, many people have talked about this, but it's something that's happening where the media is divide and conquer strategy, and the media is basically like an arm of the government at this point. And so you get these people talking about trans, and they're talking about trans bathrooms, and they're talking about abortion or pro-life or whatever, and issues like social issues that completely gloss over the fact that a lot of people can barely fucking afford to survive. And it's not going to help whether there's a Republican or I don't know what my cat's doing, but she, hold on. Yeah, but so they're trying to create this illusion that we're living in this country of Democrat versus Republican. And if you talk to an older person, they're very into this stuff, if you're a boomer and stuff. They're still really invested in the construct of Republican versus Democrat, because a lot of times they're not worried about shit because they have so much money, or they're on a pension, or their financial situation is very different. And a lot of times they're literally comfortable, or they're very rich, If you look at the numbers, you'll just see, like, I'm not even going to point to a study, but it's just pretty obvious on the face of it that younger people, and we're basically like 30 and under, and obviously I'm included in that demographic from a money standpoint, not in terms of my age, but like so you get a lot of people that are younger and they don't have money, and it's because of the job market. And so I don't know if I had any I think AOC, it's funny that people talk about her and they talk about, well, she's dumb but she's hot, And I'm like, how about she's dumb and she's not hot? How about that? I don't find her attractive. See, okay, but everyone has different tastes, right? But to me, I said this the other day on Twitter, but she's sort of the embodiment of the Dunning-Kruger effect, because she has her face to me. And I don't mean this to insult her. She's not going to listen to this, so what does it matter? But I'm just saying, like, by saying this, I'm not trying to defame her or anything like that, or insult her. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, to me, she's sort of the personification of the Dunning-Kruger effect, because her when I see her face, to me, I see dumb and confident. Those two things, So, like, to me, when I look at AOC, like, and that's kind of what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, right? The people who are ignorant don't really understand that they're ignorant. And, that can apply to a lot of people. So I'm not saying, like, well, other people are stupid, but I'm smart, I mean, in a way, I'm sort of saying that, but because I'm accusing this. I mean, maybe that's what people think when they see my face. Well, no, I don't think they would think confident, But when I look at AOC, I think two things. I think dumb. You got dumb and you got confident, And then to me, that's sort of like the Dunning-Kruger effect. But I was just going to say, if I thought AOC would redistribute the wealth, I would vote for her. Even though principally I'm not really for that idea, because on some level I am a capitalist, even though I think the problem with capitalism is that it turns into what we're dealing with right now. And like my old boss, he was really into the capitalism stuff, and he would say that if you don't like Elon Musk, you're just jealous, And it's funny because he wasn't that much older, but he still had this really boomer mindset that, it serves you. People believe what they generally want. People kind of believe what they want to believe, and it serves him to have this ethos, if you work hard, you'll make money, even though for him, he has his own business and he's struggling, not terribly, but he really has to work every day. But yeah, it's just a weird situation where a few years ago, when I was living in the group home, that was a different situation because I had fewer expenses. So in that sense, a person from the outside will be like, well, you're being dishonest and disingenuous because when you were living, you have more expenses now. That's why you can barely afford to survive. And it's like, okay, well, 4 years ago when I was still living here and I had moved out of the group home, I did not have this problem. I wasn't really able to save money. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I could occasionally buy stuff. I need to buy new shoes. My shoes are fucked up. And then the other day I was like, well, I'll just use I have these old pair of shoes. I have 2 pairs of shoes. And so I put on the other shoes and then I was like, oh, I forgot why I don't wear these. Because it's nothing that bad, but it's like, they're kind of like skater shoes, but they make a tap on the floor when you walk in them. So in that sense, they're really not sneakers, because I think the word for sneaker, I think that came up, I don't know the etymology, but I think it's because you can sneak around in them because they don't make much sound, as opposed to like a business shoe or whatever, where you're going to hear someone walking around when they're wearing that type of shoe, right? And the point is, like, so I tried on those shoes and those sneakers, and I was like, oh, I forgot why I don't use these sneakers, and they're sitting in my closet, So like I could literally afford to buy a new pair of sneakers. Like, I'm not saying, but the point is, like, I have a certain amount of savings, and the part of the reason I don't buy stuff is because I'm sort of this loner person, and I don't have a network and a family like I've said, like everyone else seems to that I see. So, and like I said with Joey, his situation is a little bit different, and if he wanted to, he could well, okay, what I'm saying is, like, if he lost his job for some reason, and he's even talked about this, so like when he talked about it he said that he was afraid he was going to get fired a few weeks ago for some reason, I don't remember, and he wasn't like crestfallen about it, He didn't seem to be that upset or nervous about it, and it's partly because he has a family, and he has an extended family, and he has a problem with some of these people, and they're not all like completely supportive of him or whatever. But still, they don't want to see him. It would still be a situation where he's living with his grandmother, and it's not like she's going to kick him out, if he didn't have a job. And in fact, he didn't have a job for quite a long time, and I don't even remember exactly what he was doing, but then he was able to get a job. But that's not my situation. I'm supporting myself, and it feels like more and more of a struggle. And the fact that I look at my bank account and I see it going down over time, and not in a dramatic way, because I don't spend money that I don't have to, you know what I mean? But like I was saying, my shoes right now are kind of fucked up, so I kind of need to buy new shoes, because the job that I do is actually pretty active. I can't, it's not a desk job, but like I hold off on buying new shoes because of my money situation. So I'm just wondering, like, are other people having this problem? Is anyone listening having this problem? And like I said, I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. I'm just working a 40-hour-a-week job. It's not minimum wage at all. If it were minimum wage, I wouldn't be able to live here anymore. I think I would have to go back to the group home or find some other situation, and I don't even know what that would be. But it's pretty close to minimum wage. Not right now, but like I said, that changes. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but in a couple months I won't be making this, and it's going to go down. And but again, that's another reason for me to move into the city. Long Island is a lonely place for me. If I were living in the city, I would have a roommate, or maybe even 2 roommates. And then people listening might be, might be thinking, well, that might drive you crazy. I don't know. I mean, I've had roommates before. I'm very used to being by myself at this point, but it's not something that I can't deal with. And when I was at the group home, that's like having roommates on steroids, you know? But yeah, anyway, I don't know how this problem gets solved, and it seems less and less like it's going to be through legislation. So I don't know what's going to happen to this country. You know, Peter Turchin, who's like a historian, he calls himself a scientist of cliodynamics. That's the word he's invented, which means basically studying history as a science. And he's noticed patterns, and why wouldn't you notice patterns? But the point is, like, and he's not the first person to come up with this idea, but like he basically contends that history is cyclical, you know? And I don't know. I feel like we're not in a good part of the cycle. And to be honest, it feels like it might get worse before it gets better. So, I don't know. Anyway, I saw that okay. Oh yeah, another thing is like, so my old boss, he gave me a painting, which was generous of him. And he was a generous guy, for the most part. So I never wanted to sell it, but now I'm in a situation where I don't really feel like I have an option. And I like the painting, or else he would... I was admiring it when he got it, you know? And he decided to be nice. You know, he said, you know, if you really like it, you can have it. And the funny thing is, like, of the paintings that he brought it to the office or whatever, and he said, look at all these paintings I got. This was like a sort of endearing aspect of his personality, but he would get excited. He would go to these house... Okay, so I feel like I'm talking a little bit too slowly. But anyway, so he would go to these like house... okay, I don't know the name of it, what it's called, but it's like when a person dies and then estate sale or whatever. And it was other things like auctions and stuff like that. So he would go to these things, then he would come back and be like, look at these great paintings that I got, and this one is like... this is cool, and like we don't even really know who this is, but maybe we can figure it out, and stuff like that. And then so he brought these paintings, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool, and I'll blah blah blah. You know, I didn't want to say like that kind of looks like shit, but that's okay, you know, like and I didn't really think that anyway. It was just like I guess, yeah, it's a nice painting, you know, that type of thing. But the one painting that he brought that I actually liked, and I was like, I really like that. And then we were trying to figure out who did it. And it turns out that it's a mildly famous painter. So I think of those paintings that he got, the one that I have is the most valuable. And I don't really feel like I have an option but to sell it at this point. And I don't even really know how I'm going to do that. I don't know, because this is not like an eBay type of thing. And this painting is a large painting. It's 3 by 4 feet. And I had to... It was like a project for me. I had to go to Home Depot because it was a, it had no, I'm trying to think of how to say this, but it had no backing to it, you know? And it wasn't like a normal canvas where like the canvas is bouncy, you know, and it's stretched out over wood. It was a canvas board that this guy painted on. And so I had to go to Home Depot and get all these lengths of wood, and then like get this specific type of glue, and I ended up using the whole glue bottle, and the glue bottle was not small, but I had to like put the wood planks on the back of the canvas board, and then, you know, screw in these things, and then put twine around it, and, you know, do that, and like make it so that you could actually put up the painting. And then I successfully did that. And at first it was it was funny because like I asked my sister and she said, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that." And then she said, "Get these 3M strips, and they have Velcro on them, and you can just attach it to the back of the canvas board and then to your wall and line it up, and you can just press it on there." And I really didn't think it would work, but I thought, well, she knows what she's talking about, and for the most part she does. But I tried that, and then I got my hot neighbor in here, and I was having her help me. It's my former neighbor. But I said to her, like, "Can you do me a favor? I'm sorry to ask you this, but can you help me put up a painting?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'll help you do that." And so she came in, and see, you remember when I was talking about how embarrassed I was about how my apartment looked? When she came in the apartment, I was like, "Oh, sorry for the cat barf." It was like that type of thing, like I was embarrassed. But anyway, she was like, "Oh yeah, well, you have a cat, so whatever." But she came in, and we were both standing there with a painting on. I was on the right side, and she was on the left side, like lifting it up against the wall, trying to get it to align with these Velcro strips. And she told me, like, she was like, "This isn't gonna work." And I was like, "No, I hoped it would, but you're kind of right. It's not gonna work." So then I had to go to Home Depot and get all this stuff, and I did that, so that now I have it up on the wall. And I never intended to sell it, partly because I didn't want to hurt this guy's feelings. It's also partly because like if I had a bunch of money, I would not sell the painting, because I like this painting. I might even put a picture of it, but I don't, maybe not. It's not one of the, it was the only thing that I left out when I did the apartment tour video, and I was showing everything that was up in my apartment. But essentially it's a painting of like a naked lady who's in a very relaxed pose. When I'm making it sound like it's a euphemism for something. She's just, it's kind of abstract, but you can also see that it's a naked lady. And the guy who painted it, I'm not going to say who it was, but nobody would have heard of him. But I still know that he was minorly famous, And, but this guy was well known to be gay. I only knew that because I looked him up. And I was able to decode his signature, which was very difficult to read. And I was the one that figured out who it was, and that's partly the reason that my boss said, "You know what, you can have the painting." And I appreciated that, And then it turned into kind of a headache in terms of like how to put it up, But the point is, like, it's not an eBay thing. I mean, I guess it could be. I'm not saying it's impossible to ship, but like I'm going to have to get it like appraised or something, because I believe it to be worth roughly $1,000, maybe closer to even to $2,000. I'm really not sure, but I can't really, with the situation I'm in, I can't just have $1,000 painting on my wall and be like, "Oh yeah, this is fine. I'm just going to keep letting my bank account go down," The amount of money that I have, and again, this is because of the way that I don't really spend money. I have enough money to basically survive for, I think, maybe about, maybe 3 months. Maybe not quite, But definitely 2 months. If I lost my job, or if I decided not to work or whatever. So 2 to 3 months. Like, that's how much I have in my bank account, basically. And you might think that that's not bad, or whatever. But it's like, okay, well, I don't take vacations. I don't do anything, I go into the city. I drive into the city, and then I get an MTA, notice that I owe them $48 for driving into the fucking city. They're punishing, this is progressive politics for you. The people that drive into the city, and they want you to get this easy pass bullshit. I've talked about that. I don't know if, I've said this before, but like I disliked Easy Pass. I don't know who's listening and if anyone is New York centric and they like Easy Pass, but I've disliked Easy Pass from the beginning. And I thought, well, so what are they doing? Is it a tracking device? And I was a kid. I was like 12 or 13 when they started the Easy Pass bullshit. And even back then, I just thought, you know what? Miss me with that bullshit. And of course, they turned it into like, it's basically mandatory. But it's not free. You know, but you have to pay for it. You have to pay for... And it used to be a toll where you could... When I was growing up, we would go through the Queensboro... I think it's the Queensboro Bridge toll into the city. And my mom would have a bunch of quarters. I think it was 6. And she would throw it in the basket thing. And that was what you needed. And when Joey was here, I only drove into the city once. And we drove in, parked at a parking garage that he paid for, and then we drove back. So, you know, I don't want to be too dramatic about it. I think maybe they're including another time that I drove into the city and that I haven't paid that yet, and I don't know if they're adding a late fee or something, but I'm talking about, like, this is a way of basically fucking the working class, and it's just very strange to me. Why would you want the people that have the least money to be the people that are punished for driving into the city to work, that's what's effectively happening. Even if you have Easy Pass, I don't even know how much that costs, but you have to pay however much. In fact, just because I'm talking about it, I'm going to look it up. Okay, I googled it and it was going to take too long because you have to go through this labyrinthine, MTA website, whatever. But so I asked Claude. So, according to Claude, and I believe this because it's looking it up, I don't think it's making up a random number. If you have an Easy Pass, you drive from Long Island into the city to work, drive back. That is $14 both ways. So in other words, you drive in, it's $7. You drive back, it's a total of $14. That's a fuck you to anyone who has to work for a living. And then on top of that, you have this congestion pricing thing that our fearless governor has decided is so progressive, you know. So you get charged for driving in the city, not just through the toll. So this is what I'm talking about, and it's not academic, it's not theoretical. It's a real thing that's happening to people. I knew this was going to happen. So I just got hit with, I don't know, it's $7 if you fucking have the Easy Pass. So if you don't have the Easy Pass and you're violating the Easy Pass, you know, you're just driving through the thing. I don't know is it $10? Something like that? I don't know. Because you're getting hit with a penalty for not having an Easy Pass. So I'm assuming it's something like $10. So it's $20. The toll itself is basically $20 to drive in and out of the city through the Queensboro Bridge. I know that you can take that highway where you don't have to go through that toll. I think there's a way to drive into the city where you're not paying that toll. But a lot of people have to use, for various reasons, that Queensboro Bridge tunnel or some other tunnel that's going to also be basically the same kind of thing. So, but yeah, if you have the Easy Pass, it's $7 every time you go through the tunnel. Every time you go through that passageway, you know, into the city and out of the city. So I don't know how this is sustainable. And again, you might be thinking, well, that's not that much money. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, if you're driving into the city 5 days a week for work, which that's kind of a sucky situation anyway, but that's a lot of people. A lot of people drive into the city to do their job. You know, it's just a fuck you to the working class. It's just, and then you get the congestion pricing, which I don't even remember what that is, but if I remember correctly, basically, like, you drive into the city during the day, it's something like $15 just for driving in the city. It has nothing to do with the toll. Yeah, so I just don't understand how this is progressive. Because if you're progressive, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate or whatever. Like, I'm trying to speak on their behalf. Why is it progressive to basically fuck the working class? Like, let's just say that these people, the progress part of it is supposedly that you're trying to get fewer people to drive in the city. Which, how much sense does that really make anyway? But that's whatever. That's the progress part of it. You're having less traffic in the city from cars because cars are bad because they're not public transportation, where you're producing more carbon. You're having a higher carbon footprint if you're driving a car versus if you take a bus, because a bus has multiple people on it and the subway has multiple people on it or whatever. So you have a lower carbon footprint, but you're fucking over the people that are working, and they're not doing it. They're not driving. They're not taking a joyride into the city. They have to use their car to get into the city. So why is that progress? I don't really understand that. Well, but then again, I'm not smart like those people who instituted that policy. Anyway, so it's just a funny thing where, like, I just feel like I can barely afford to survive. And somebody suggested that I start a Patreon. I'm not gonna. I'm not opposed to that. But if I start a Patreon, first of all, like, people are going to be paying me, and then I'm going to feel like, well, I don't want to disappoint people, and I don't even know. The video that he was responding to was on my other channel. And it's on my other channel because it was related to race. It was a theory that I have about, basically something related to race that I'm not going to talk about. And it's not even something that's bad, but it's something that because I didn't feel like I could talk about on this channel because I have so many subscribers relative to the other one. But yeah, I don't think I have enough subscribers to start a Patreon, and I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable with it because, like, I don't like when I do these videos, it's just a random guy talking about basically random stuff, and I don't know that it makes sense to have a Patreon. But I don't know, like, maybe someone will comment, I don't know. But it's not something that I'm opposed to. I just feel like I don't think it's really appropriate for the content of my channel, and also, like, for the number of subscribers, because I feel like people only start a Patreon. I don't even know if I could start a Patreon. I don't know if there's, like, a limit, like, if there's a threshold of subscribers that you have to have. I don't know. I guess it's a possibility, but it would just make me feel a little bit uncomfortable to sort of be, soliciting random people that I don't know for money, which I'm not doing, by the way. I'm just saying that somebody suggested that, and I was flattered, though. I appreciate that you suggested that, if you're listening. I don't think I'm going to do that, though. I'm not really sure. Anyway, I guess that's about all I wanted to say. I think I'm going to talk about the 10,000 hour rule again, but I'm not going to have this I'm not going to talk about that in this video. But I think I might talk about that tomorrow. I did a video about that. I didn't really like it that much, and I put it on private. So I think I might do that again. But I have an interesting theory about that theory. Well, first of all, I think it's bullshit. I mean, that's the way I feel about it. This 10,000 hour rule. But I have a theory that it's sort of, it's this weirdly liberal, but also at the same time conservative theory. So part of it's sort of a liberal theory that's masquerading as something conservative. And the reason it's conservative is because conservatives believe all you have to do is work really hard, and then you can do whatever it is you're trying to do, As if, like, if I played in a club in Hamburg for 10,000 hours, I would be able to be John Lennon because he did that. It doesn't make sense. But yes, I don't believe in the 10,000 hour rule, the 10,000 hour myth. is what I would call it. I think that's what I called the original video. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think I might talk about that tomorrow. I don't know if anyone feels like listening to that or thinking about that. But yeah, that's what I was thinking about doing. Anyway, thanks for listening. You know what? I'm going to add an addendum here. I did that thing where I start talking about something and I don't finish my thought. But I just want to say that what I was talking about with that painting, and that the artist was known to be gay, and this was like around 1970 that he was active. But the point of my saying that, and I didn't know, I didn't even know who he was until I looked at the painting and saw his signature. The point of my saying that is, like, when I think of gay artists, I tend to think of people that draw women in an unflattering way that subtracts from their natural beauty. It's not across the board, but it's a thing that gay guys do. It's something that Michelangelo famously did with his sculptures. If you know, you know. Whatever the fuck that means. But anyway, if you know about Michelangelo, however that's pronounced, you know that his sculptures of women are often actually just basically like dudes with tits. So they have masculine, but you can look this up. Michelangelo's statues of men are masculine, but when you look at the women, they're also kind of masculine, because he had this attitude about the male body. And as far as I know, he was gay. And so this guy, the artist who did the painting that I have, he was gay, and I only know that because I looked him up. It's not really that interesting. But the painting of it's basically a nude woman, and it's not masculine. It's not made to be masculine at all. And she has a pretty face. It's sort of abstract, but it's still attractive, and it's a display of female beauty in terms of the body, the anatomy or whatever. And I just thought that was interesting. And so that's all I'm saying is, like, that's partly why I like the painting, because obviously this guy had an eye for beauty, and he wasn't thinking about whether he likes women or he doesn't like women or whatever. I don't even know. Maybe he hated women, maybe he loved them. All I know is he was gay. Anyway, that's all. I just wanted to add an addendum. Now I'm feeling I don't even know if I should add this onto the video. But anyway, yeah, thanks for listening.